Hi everyone, today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free, not quite a review, kind of a reaction video to the Dragon Reborn. For those of you who haven't watched any of my Wheel of Time videos so far, I made a deal with my best friend. I'm reading all of the Wheel of Time this year as it's one of her favorite series, and she is going to read all of the Cosmere. I had previously read the first 2 books in the Wheel of Time when I was quite a bit younger, and this was really my first time reading the Dragon Reborn. I think I started it as a kid and then stopped. So this was as far as I had gotten in the series. So with this book, we were covering new territory. Like I did with The Great Hunt, I filmed a spoilery reaction vlog while I was reading, which I haven't edited it yet, so we'll see how that came out. Usually what I'm going to try to do is I'll post that about a day after I post this video. So if you want more Wheel of Time reactions than what you get from just this video, you can go check that out. Once again with Dragon Reborn, I continue to have a pretty mixed reaction while still generally enjoying the series, and this might upset some of the hardcore Wheel of Time fans that I know watch this, but I want to be honest with you guys about what works and doesn't work for me while I'm reading. I know this is a series that a lot of people are passionate about, and I really respect that. I'm definitely not coming to it with the nostalgia factor that a lot of people I know have, so that's always something that really affects how people view something, but still, there's a lot of great things with this series. There are just things that don't completely work for me. And now that I've read 3 books, I'm definitely planning to continue. I mean, first of all, I'm a woman of my word, and I committed to reading all of The Wheel of Time in 2021. But also, I am genuinely enjoying it. Just like with The Great Hunt, the pacing with The Dragon Reborn was overall really good. So The Eye of the World was kind of the outlier so far with that one. This is the first book where we don't have a whole lot of Rand and Rand's point of view. And I thought that was really interesting. It made me feel like in some ways this book is the first book that really is opening up the epic scope of the series as other characters start to take a more important role and we get to see more of them. And Rand is basically, well, you know, I feel like it's really hard to talk about the 3rd book in a 14-book series without any spoilers. I'm not going to talk about any important plot points, twists, deaths, just, stuff like that, but I'll probably mention characters' names and talk generally about their arcs and things like that. So if you don't want that, I don't know why you'd be watching this video, to be honest. But if you're still, if you haven't finished reading or rereading The Dragon Reborn, I think you'll be pretty safe to watch this video. So yeah, the fact that Rand took a backseat and is this figure that other people are now reacting to, that really made me feel like the series was kicking up a gear into epic mode. That was a terrible metaphor. I'm sorry, guys. Shifting into epic gear, switching into epic mode, I don't know, but I did like it. We are already getting to the point where there are so many political complications going on that you're realizing, oh, everyone is going to be the problem in this series. Some of the original characters, like Perrin and Mat, have much more developed arcs for the first time in this book. We get to see a lot more of them for the first time. I think that's really a good thing. This was the first book where, well, you'll see this if you end up watching my spoiler vlog, but in The Great Hunt, I kept saying as I went along, oh, now this character's annoying me. Oh, now this character's annoying me. And I really didn't feel that way with The Dragon Reborn. I wasn't feeling particularly annoyed at anyone in particular for most of the book. So that was actually a nice change. I generally enjoyed the arcs of the characters that we saw. I think there were some characters that we saw a lot of that didn't really develop a lot. But for example, I felt like Perrin's arc really kind of mirrored what was going on with Rand in the previous book, and I liked how his character was getting developed. Mat, I had a very complicated reaction to, I will admit. Mat is a character that was definitely annoying me quite a bit in previous books. He did not annoy me in this book. I just had this very mixed reaction to Mat, where part of me was thinking, oh my god, you're an idiot, and then the other part of me was thinking, you're also the only intelligent person in the room, because his instinct a lot of the time seems to just be, this is not a great situation. I should leave. I should get out of here. And I think that's pretty sensible. I think he might be the only smart person in the book in that regard. But then on the other hand, he has this natural curiosity that just keeps getting him into trouble. So yeah, I don't like Mat yet. I know a lot of people, I think my best friend said that he was her favorite character when she reread the series. I don't like Mat. I kind of sympathize with Mat, and I think he's interesting. I just don't find him to be inherently a likable person. I do feel like we got to see a lot more without having the characters in the same place of how Perrin and Matt are reacting to Rand, and Rand being the Dragon Reborn. So that was overall interesting. I liked those things about the book. I don't always love how Robert Jordan does character arcs, though. A lot of times I feel like the character will be stuck in a certain place for most of the book and then experience sudden growth. It's not that that's not true to reality at all. It's not like that. It's just sometimes I want to feel like we're making more progress. I feel like that's a great summary of how I feel about the Wheel of Time. I wish I felt like we were making more progress, because I kind of feel like I just read a 3-book introduction to a huge series, just based on how some things work out in this book, just in general. I feel like now that we finished book 3, I kind of have this feeling, well, now we can really get started with the series. I kind of felt that way at the end of book 2 and at the end of book 1. So we'll see. Maybe this is a series that never actually gets going. It does feel like things just take forever. Even from the early books, just things develop so slowly. We get information so slowly. There's already a lot of characters. And it's generally interesting. I like big scope. I like things to feel big. I don't mind things being complicated. But I just lack faith sometimes with this series that we are actually going anywhere. Speaking of going anywhere, we're also constantly on the road again. Someone promised me in the comments, or maybe it was my friend, I don't know. I've been promised that our road trips will stop in book 4 and that people will stay in the same place for once, which I am so ready for, because it's kind of seemed that as soon as anybody ever gets to do anything interesting in this series, they have to flee an inn in the middle of the night. So yeah, I don't want to give spoilers, but one thing I really love in the series that hasn't even been in the series that much so far, the Forsaken. I think they are really cool villains. I am very excited to see more of the Forsaken. Very into that. I think they seem awesome. They seem pretty badass. Sometimes I just wish we got more of certain things. Like there was a really interesting setup in the prologue for a situation with a character, which somehow I was expecting to really get addressed a bit more in the book, because I feel like it actually kind of has to do with something I might have kind of spaced out with while reading book 2 with the White Cloaks. So, and then nothing really seemed to happen with it on screen. On page, we didn't really see too much go on with that in this book. I'm sure it'll come back later. But it's stuff like that, where anytime something seems interesting, then we don't seem to follow up with it forever. So I will admit, I probably have too much Wheel of Time knowledge for somebody that is reading the series for the first time. Some of this is just from being a Sanderson fan for a decade, and just that just brings you into contact with Wheel of Time fans, I feel like. So there are just certain things I know. There are characters that got introduced in the Dragon Reborn who I know are going to be very important. Some of them are love interests. It was cool to see them get introduced. Didn't really have super strong feelings about them. There was one arc in that regard with Perrin where it just reminded me of how I'm not a huge fan of how Robert Jordan does romance arcs. I think this is something that a lot of people have talked about in the past, so I don't need to really harp on it. But basically, characters will kind of not like each other or be neutral on each other, and then suddenly it seems like there's something there. Although I was thinking about this after I finished The Dragon Reborn, and I got this very cute image. I couldn't find much online about the relationship between Robert Jordan and his wife, because of course, as most of you guys probably know, she was his editor and she was his editor before they got married. And so I kind of just wonder what that relationship was like. Obviously, they were a really strong team, really strong partnership for years and years and years. But I'm just curious, I'm curious. I want to know how that romance unfolded, and if that kind of, if the way he's writing romances in his books, I just have this feeling that he was just kind of writing, and suddenly he found himself in a relationship with her, and he's like, oh, great, and then he kept writing. I don't know. I mean that affectionately, so I hope it's taken that way. But I definitely think Harriet must be clearly based on how he writes women as well, which I think he said was influenced by his wife. Very strong, determined, clearly very accomplished woman who I think must deserve a ton of respect. Maybe his relationship with her is coming across in how he writes people getting together. I don't know. I don't always assume that authors are just projecting things when they write. I try not to talk about that sort of thing, but I think he said himself that his female characters were very influenced by Harriet. So, I can't help but imagine that. What was their relationship like? I think it was probably really great. I do have some issues with the portrayal of the differences between men and women, which is such a theme in this series. It's like a central theme in the Wheel of Time, is this almost like conflict between men and women, and the fact that women are the only ones now that can use magic. I actually feel like I don't feel at all like the Wheel of Time is a misogynistic series. In fact, I think this was way ahead of its time in the portrayal of women for the 90s. And in some ways, I feel like it's way ahead of a lot of what gets written today, because I think women are portrayed in a very respectful way overall. They're not objectified. They're not really the objects of violence. It's definitely a better vision in a fantasy world. You know, it's closer to what I would want to see. I don't really have a problem with the way Robert Jordan writes women overall, although sometimes it gets a little cliche, or like the women all seem to have certain traits. I think what gets old to me is this thing he does where the women are constantly rolling their eyes and going, oh, men are just so dumb. And the men are constantly rolling their eyes and going, oh, women are just so confusing and inexplicable. And that just feels a little dated. It's not like I've never made jokes like that myself or with my husband, but I do kind of sometimes feel like all his men and all his women fall into certain molds or categories, which isn't great. And that's where it maybe feels a little bit more dated. But even the women who are supposed to be different in how they dress or present themselves, they still sort of fit this Robert Jordan woman mold. I also kind of like that mold, so I'm okay with it. It's just something I notice when I read the books. Like, at least they get to do a lot of cool things and it's not creepy. For some reason, I also had this issue towards the end of The Dragon Reborn where I just started losing steam and interest, and I don't know why, because all should have been exciting, and I just kind of, around page 400 or 500, I stopped caring for a while. I don't really know why. I still felt perfectly interested in the series. It just feels like I always hit a point with these books in the middle to the end where I just have to push through. I don't love that. I'm definitely going to keep pushing through. And by the time I finish, I usually feel, well, by the next day anyway, I don't remember what I said in my vlog, but by now I'm feeling pretty excited to read book 4. I feel like cool things are going to happen. I also feel like I just read a 3-book intro based on how things ended in this book. So yeah, there's that. I have been told that I shouldn't compare Sanderson to Robert Jordan because Robert Jordan came first and influenced Sanderson, which doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like that is absolutely why I should compare them, because we know the Wheel of Time was so influential on Brandon Sanderson and how he learned to craft epic fantasy. But just because something was the first or was really influential doesn't mean we can't look at what a later series did and see where improvements have been made. So what I really feel like Sanderson has achieved in the Stormlight Archive that the Wheel of Time is absolutely missing is really well plotted, well-controlled arcs where you always feel like you're accomplishing something. Brandon Sanderson has arcs. He has series-long arcs. He has book-long arcs. There are arcs that only last for a part in the book. And so there's just a lot. You always feel like you're getting somewhere. It's just a lot more controlled and wrangled in. And I think that came from his experiences in working on and reading The Wheel of Time. So I don't mean that as a criticism of Robert Jordan exactly, but this whole series, he clearly had just a lot in his head about where it was going. And a lot of people clearly just really bought into that, really embraced it. And for me, it's a little too much setup, a little too slow. I don't mind things being slow, but I don't know. I lack a clear sense of progression in this series, but I also find it in some ways very exciting. So those are my conflicting feelings about the Wheel of Time. It's a combination of excitement and boredom. I hope that you enjoyed getting to hear my reactions to this. If you're reading along with me, if you're thinking of reading, if you're a big fan, if you've read it before, let me know what you think. This is really just my experience. This is not even really intended as a proper review of any kind. It's not that I think any of my reviews are about anything except my experience, but these videos especially are just focusing on my experience reading this series that has been iconic for so many people. So let me know how you feel about The Dragon Reborn. Let me know how you feel about how I feel about The Dragon Reborn, and I hope to see you next time.